I ran through the hospital corridor, breathless, the walls echoing my footsteps. My son was in intensive care. Those words alone shattered me. But when the nurse grabbed my arm and whispered, "Hide and trust me," my blood went cold. I froze behind the door of the next room, my hands trembling, my heart hammering so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then through the narrow crack, I saw something no mother should ever see: my daughter-in-law, leaning over my unconscious son, touching his IV line with the calm of someone who's done it before. In that moment, the world didn't just break, it went silent. Before I share my story, I want to know you're here with me. Just say "listening" in the comments or tell me where you're from. I love hearing how far my story reach. Sometimes even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. If you're new here, please subscribe to our channel. Every story here is real, raw, and told straight from the heart. I'm Zephyrine Calder, and this is what happened the night I almost lost my son. The hallway smelled like bleach and rain-soaked asphalt, that strange blend only hospitals seem to have. My shoes slapped the vinyl floor with each frantic step. I was 65, but I ran like someone half my age because the message on my phone had cut through me like a knife Harlan's in intensive care. "Come if you want." No details, no comfort. Just Sable's voice in my head, always so cold, so calculated. Room numbers blurred past 606, 608, 610. My breath came in shallow bursts. Then a hand gripped my arm, firm but controlled, pulling me sideways into the darkness of a half-open room. I almost screamed, but a voice whispered right against my ear, "Hide and trust me. Don't make a sound." It was a nurse, late 30s, early 40s, maybe eyes sharp, calm, too calm for what she'd just done. I froze, my back pressed to the wall. Through the narrow crack of the door, I could see into the next room, my son's. The beeping monitor was steady. A shadow moved inside. Sable, perfectly pressed, beige coat hair like a magazine ad. She waited until the duty nurse left, then leaned toward the IV stand. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. Her hand hovered over the clamp, brushing the clear tubing. She turned the label, slightly reading it. Her expression didn't change. Not fear, not sadness, something colder. Then, as if nothing was wrong, she smoothed her coat and stepped into the hallway. That's when I saw him, a man in a charcoal suit, waiting by the vending machine. She walked up to him. Their voices were low, but the hallway carried sound like a confession booth. I caught fragments, transfer papers, before he wakes. Guardianship if needed. Guardianship, transfer papers. For a man barely clinging to life, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. My knees nearly gave out. When Sable disappeared down the corridor with the man, the nurse reappeared like a ghost, closing the door behind her. "If you love your son," she said, voice firm but quiet, "do exactly what I say." Her name tag caught the light, Naraya Brooks, ICU-RN. I nodded, trembling so hard my teeth clicked. I didn't know what this was or why she'd pulled me into it, but something in her eyes, an urgency mixed with anger, made me listen. I looked back once through the narrow glass window. Harlan lay still under white sheets machines, keeping time like a cruel metronome. Somewhere deep in my chest, fear gave way to something sharper, doubt, and the faint, terrible thought that maybe my son wasn't here because of bad luck. Maybe someone wanted him that way. We slipped into the nurse's break room, a small space with humming machines and the faint smell of instant coffee. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. Naraya shut the door, then turned her face tight with focus. "You saw her," she said. I nodded. My voice cracked. "She touched his IV." Why, Naraya took a long breath. 4 years ago, my sister died the same way, internal bleeding. Her husband was poisoning her with anticoagulants, slow, invisible. She kept getting weaker until one night she just didn't wake up. Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "When your son was admitted 3 weeks ago, I saw the same signs. Fatigue, dizziness, nausea, all brushed off as stress. but his INR levels kept climbing. I knew something wasn't right. My stomach dropped. I know she's doing something Naraya cut in, but we can't accuse her without proof. You're going to have to act like you know nothing, like you're just a scared, helpless mother. The words stung because that was exactly how I felt. She grabbed a clipboard. I've called Dr. Malcolm Ortiz toxicology. He'll take samples from Harlan's IV and send them to the lab. It has to go through the chain of custody or it won't hold in court. Meanwhile, I'm requesting security footage from the last 48 hours every time someone entered that room. I nodded, gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. She's been planning this, I whispered. That man in the hallway, he said something about guardianship. That means she has legal help, Naraya said flatly. If your son doesn't recover, she gets control of everything, money, property accounts. And if he's declared incapacitated, she can claim power of attorney. My mind reeled. I remembered the day 2 years ago when I sold my last plot of land to help Harlan expand his delivery company. $180,000 transferred into his account. I'd trusted him, he was my boy. But the house deed was in his name too. Sable had said it was for simpler paperwork. I hadn't argued. Since their wedding, every time I called, she answered first. Every time I planned to visit, she canceled last minute. He's busy, Zephyrine, she'd say sweetly. Let him rest. Rest. That word burned now. Dr. Ortiz arrived, a quiet man with dark circles and kind eyes. He examined the IV, then sealed a small vial of fluid into a labeled bag. If there's anything foreign in this line, we'll know by morning, he said. But we'll run a quick test now. He disappeared into the lab down the hall. Minutes later, Naraya's pager buzzed. She looked at the message and exhaled slowly. Preliminary test is positive for warfarin. The word echoed inside me like a drumbeat. Warfarin, rat poison, blood thinner. My son was being bled from the inside out, 1 dose at a time. Before I could speak, a knock came at the door. A security guard leaned in, holding a clipboard. Ms. Brooks, per your request, ICU footage. The patient's wife entered alone twice last night. No staff present. Naraya's jaw tightened. That's all we need to know for now. She turned to me. Listen carefully, Mrs. Calder. Tomorrow morning, you'll go to their house. Look for pills, powders, anything suspicious. Don't confront her, just observe and call me. We'll make this stick. I glanced through the small glass window into the dim hallway. Harlan's room glowed softly under the fluorescent light. Machines still beeped steadily, unaware of the storm gathering outside their rhythm. I pressed my palm to the cool glass. I'll do whatever it takes, I whispered, even if it kills me. Naraya placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. Then we'll do it together. That night, as I sat in the waiting area staring at the rain streaking down the glass, one thought refused to leave me. If love could make a mother blind, then maybe fear could finally make her see. I wasn't sure which, I was yet blind or awake, but I knew one thing for certain. Tomorrow I'd find the proof that would save my son or destroy me trying. The next morning, I drove through the quiet streets of Biltmore Forest, mist hanging low over the manicured lawns. Every house looked like it belonged in a glossy magazine, every house but theirs. Harlan's driveway was empty, the porch lights still on even though the sun had climbed above the trees. Sable had texted me earlier. If you want to bring Harlan some clothes, you can come by. Just don't touch his paperwork. It was almost kind, but I could read the threat beneath it. I parked at the curb, heart pounding. The air smelled of pine and detergent, too clean, too staged. When I opened the front door with the spare key Harlan had given me years ago, the silence inside hit me like a wall. No music, no TV, just the faint ticking of a clock somewhere deep in the house. I told myself I was there for his clothes, but every step reminded me of what Naraya had said. Look for pills or powders. The kitchen gleamed like a showroom, white marble glass jars perfectly aligned. On the counter sat a small blender, its blade flecked with something pale and chalky. Beside it, a plastic scoop no bigger than a thimble and a jar labeled Daily Vitamins. The label looked new, printed yesterday maybe. I unscrewed the lid and sniffed. Metallic, bitter, nothing like vitamins. On the counter, faint smudges of powder trailed toward the sink. My stomach turned. I crouched and checked the trash can. Beneath a layer of paper towels was a damp packet labeled AM Only Edges, stained orange from juice. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick picture before my hands started to shake. The refrigerator hummed behind me. When I opened it, a sticky note caught my eye stuck to the door above the orange juice carton. In neat cursive it read, OJ Plus Vitamins. Don't forget. Her handwriting. The same looping S I'd seen on Harlan's birthday card last year. For a moment I had to grip the fridge door to stay upright. She wasn't slipping it in secretly anymore. She was confident enough to make it a routine. I moved toward the study, careful not to disturb anything. The air there felt different, colder, tense. The blinds were half closed, letting in thin bars of sunlight. Harlan's laptop sat open on the desk screen, asleep, but faintly glowing. When I brushed the touchpad, an email preview appeared for a split-second transfer draft from Gideon Parr. My pulse spiked. On the desk lay a folder, thin, too neat. Inside were photocopies of the house deed business, bank statements, and something that made my breath stop, my own signature on an old power of attorney form. I'd signed it years ago for something else, but it was now stapled to a new set of documents. The sound of tires on gravel jolted me. My hands trembled as I closed the folder. I peeked through the blinds, Sable's car pulling up fast. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. I grabbed a jacket from the closet, rehearsing the excuse in my head. When she walked in heels, clicking across the tile, I forced a smile. Sable. I was just picking out a few things for Harlan. He always gets cold in those rooms. Her eyes darted to the counter, then softened. That's thoughtful of you. He needs comfort right now. She brushed past me, pouring herself a glass of water. I've been up all night with lawyers. So much paperwork when someone's ill. Lawyers, I asked, pretending confusion. She smiled. Just routine. You know how these things go. Medical consents, guardianship, financial access. I can't let anything fall through the cracks while he's recovering. Her phone buzzed on the counter. I caught the name flashing before the screen dimmed. Gideon Parr DocuSign ready. Deed transfer plus temporary guardianship. My breath caught. She grabbed the phone, turned it face down, and gave me a rehearsed smile. Anyway, I have to run some errands. Will you lock up when you leave? I nodded, holding my bag close so she wouldn't see the tiny camera blinking in my pen. Of course. Take care of yourself, dear. The moment her car pulled away again, I exhaled. My fingers dialed Naraya before my brain caught up. It's all here, I whispered. A blender powder notes about vitamins emails from a lawyer named Gideon Parr. She's about to sign something big. Don't touch a thing, Naraya ordered. Just remember everything. The lab confirmed the first test warfarin. We'll need your photos for the warrant. Get out now. I took one last picture of the blender before walking out. As I reached the door, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number appeared. When can we meet to finalize? I froze on the porch, the breeze lifting the edge of my scarf. Finalize what? The papers. My son's life. Whatever it was, I knew time had run short. This wasn't just about suspicion anymore, it was a race, and I'd just stepped onto the track. By the next morning, I had learned to control the tremor in my voice, to soften my face until I looked small and breakable. I walked into Harlan's room, clutching a blanket, pretending to steady myself against the door. Sable was already there, arranging flowers like a grieving saint. Her perfume filled the room, sweet, cloying wrong. I was just talking to the doctor, she said, turning with a smile too bright for a hospital. They think he might wake up soon. Isn't that wonderful? I forced my lips into a weak smile. It is. Maybe when he does, he'll forgive me. I pushed him so hard about the business. If I'd just trusted you both, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Her eyes softened, triumph flickering beneath. "You've been under a lot of stress, Zephyrine. What matters is we move forward. I've spoken to Gideon. He's drafting documents to make things easier for Harlan when he wakes up. Medical and financial protections. Do you think I should sign them now?" I asked, gently pretending fear of being a burden, in case I forget or something. Sable hesitated for a beat too long, then nodded. "It might be wise. Gideon will handle everything discreetly." At that moment, Naraya walked in, checking the IV line. Her eyes met mine for the briefest second, and I caught the subtle nod. Everything was in motion. "I'll be replacing his IV bag," she said evenly. Possible contamination in the last one. Sable frowned, her mask slipping for just a second. "Contamination routine precaution," Naraya replied. "Standard protocol." Dr. Ortiz followed his presence, grounding the room. "We're rotating supplies today," he explained. "Nothing to worry about." He swapped the line quickly, marking the seal with a barcode. I could feel the tension rise, their calm professionalism against Sable's brittle patience. I stood. "I'll just go get some water." When I reached for my purse, I saw it inside her tote bag, a small vial half hidden in the lining, filled with pale powder. She noticed my glance and zipped the bag quickly. My throat went dry, but I managed to smile. "Do you need anything from the cafeteria?" "No, thank you," she said lightly. "I brought my own drink." I stepped into the hallway, my pulse hammering. Near the vending machine, I heard her voice drop, low, sharp. "Send the DocuSign now. She's ready to sign." I pretended to fumble with my phone, pretending not to listen. My other hand, shaking slightly, hit record. When I returned to the room, her tone had shifted again, gentle, rehearsed. "You look pale," she said. "Are you all right?" "I didn't sleep," I whispered. "Just thinking about everything that needs to be done when Harlan comes home." "Oh, don't worry," she said sweetly. "Gideon's taking care of all of it. You just rest." Naraya re-entered with a clipboard, her voice calm but firm. "Mrs. Arden will need to monitor visitor times more closely. Hospital regulation." Sable forced a smile. Of course, whatever helps my husband, but the look she gave Naraya could have cut glass. An hour later, my phone buzzed again, another blocked number. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." I stared at the words until they blurred. Gideon. It had to be. I walked to the window, watching the rain hit the glass. My reflection looked like someone else, older, harder. I thought about the blender, the email, the powder, the lies. I thought about the son lying helpless in that bed while the woman who vowed to love him plotted his inheritance. I turned back to see Sable adjusting Harlan's blanket, her face soft with counterfeit devotion. I wanted to scream, to grab her hand and drag her to the nearest police officer, but I couldn't. Not yet. Not without letting her finish her performance. So I smiled, weak and trembling, exactly as she expected. "Thank you for taking care of him," I murmured. "I don't know what we'd do without you." She touched my shoulder lightly, her voice smooth. "We'll get through this together." As she walked out, I finally exhaled, my hands trembling around the metal rail of the bed. I looked at Naraya through the glass panel outside. She gave me a small nod. Everything was set. I leaned close to Harlan, whispering under the rhythmic beeping of the monitor. "Hold on, baby, just a little longer. The show's almost over." That night, as the hospital lights dimmed and the corridors fell silent, I sat beside him and stared at the IV tube gleaming under the faint light. I realized that pretending to be weak was the hardest part of staying strong. But if this was a play, I would see it through until the final act. And when the curtain fell, she would be the one standing in the spotlight alone. The cafe on the hospital's ground floor smelled like burnt espresso and rain-soaked wool. Outside, the sky had turned the color of rust, and the last light of day filtered through the glass like dying embers. Sable sat across from me, legs crossed, manicured hands wrapped around a paper cup she hadn't touched. She looked too perfect for the place, like she was posing for a magazine spread. Next to her sat a man I'd never met, but somehow recognized from the way he looked at me. Not curious, not kind, calculating. Gideon Parr. He stood to shake my hand, his smile smooth as silk. "Mrs. Calder, it's a pleasure. I'm so sorry for your son's condition. Sable speaks of you fondly." His voice was low, almost soothing. I felt something tighten inside me, the kind of voice that could talk a person into signing away their life. Sable slid a folder toward me. "We just need your signature to make sure everything is in order while Harlan recovers. It's purely procedural." The papers were neatly clipped, the top sheet titled, "Temporary Power of Attorney." I pretended to skim it, my finger tracing the lines as if I didn't understand. But then halfway down the page, the words caught my eye: "to act on behalf of the patient in all financial and personal matters." All, not just medical. I swallowed, letting my voice tremble slightly. "I'm not sure I understand. This says Sable would be his legal guardian." "Only temporarily," Gideon said, leaning forward. "Purely a safeguard. You'd still retain ownership of your assets. This is just to help pay bills and manage the house while he's incapacitated. You know how hospitals can be." I gave a small, nervous laugh. "Of course. I'd feel better asking the doctor first. Make sure it doesn't interfere with Harlan's treatment." Sable's smile stiffened. Gideon waved a hand dismissively. "Doctors don't handle this kind of thing. It's legal, not medical. If you want, I can have a notary come up tonight. Quick and painless." While he talked, I slipped my phone into my lap thumb, pressing the record button. The faint red dot glowed against my palm as his words poured out like poison, smooth, rehearsed, dangerous. He flipped to the last page. My stomach lurched. The signature witness line read Nariah Brooks. They were planning to forge her name. I looked up sharply but kept my voice steady. "You've thought of everything." He smiled again, oblivious. "We like to be thorough." A nurse walked by carrying a tray, and I took the chance to glance at the reflection in the window behind him. His phone buzzed the screen, lighting up. The name Sable flashed, followed by a message preview. "I'll make sure she drinks it first if she hesitates." I felt the blood drain from my face. He caught me looking, but I forced a cough to cover it. "Excuse me, just a tickle." Sable placed a gentle hand on mine, her tone sugar sweet. "Don't worry, Zephyrin, we're just trying to make sure everyone's protected." Protected. The word burned in my ears. I wanted to throw the papers back at them, to scream. Instead, I smiled faintly. "Let's talk again after dinner. I'd like to pray on it." Gideon rose, buttoning his jacket. "Of course. I'll prepare the notary for tonight. We can finalize everything in the ICU. It'll mean less red tape." I watched them walk toward the elevators, their reflections fading as the doors closed. My body trembled, but my mind had never been clearer. They weren't just trying to take my son's assets, they were making sure I wouldn't be around to stop them. I walked straight to the staff corridor where Nariah waited. When I told her everything, the forged signature, the message, the planned meeting, she didn't flinch. "We'll wire the camera in your badge," she said. "You'll wear it tonight. Ortiz and I will be watching from the monitor room. If she pours anything into your drink, or his, the team will move in." "Whitlock?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Already briefed," she said. "He'll be in the hallway at 9. That's when they plan to make their move." I nodded, my hands shaking. "She's planning to kill me too, isn't she?" Nariah didn't answer right away. She placed her hand on my arm instead. "Then let her try. This time she won't walk away." As I left the staff room, the weight of the badge against my chest felt heavier than armor. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was bait. But if justice needed a witness, I would be that witness, no matter the cost. The ICU was eerily quiet that night. The world outside was dark rain tapping the windows like a warning. The clock on the wall read 8:37 p.m. I sat beside Harlan's bed, pretending to doze, my badge camera blinking faintly against my collar. The orange juice sat on the tray table, sweating in the cold fluorescent light. The door opened softly. Sable stepped in the heels of her shoes, clicking once on the linoleum. She was smiling again, that rehearsed, soulless smile that never reached her eyes. In her hands, a tall silver thermos. "Just us tonight," she said lightly. "I thought we could have a quiet moment." "You look exhausted, Zephyrine. You need your strength." She poured 2 glasses of orange juice, the smell of citrus sharp in the sterile air. "Drink," she said. "It's fresh. You love your morning juice, right?" I picked up the glass, fingers trembling, and lifted it halfway to my lips. Then I let it slip, just enough to spill across the table. "Oh, clumsy me," I murmured, dabbing at it with a napkin. Her expression didn't flicker. "No problem. There's more." She turned away, rummaging in her purse. My breath caught as she pulled out a small vial, clear, ordinary-looking. She uncapped it, poured a few drops into the second glass, then stirred with a plastic straw. Every movement was recorded. When she turned back, her voice was soft again. "Here. This one's fine." I took the glass, but didn't drink. I set it carefully next to Harlan's monitor. I'll save it for when he wakes up. He always loved orange juice. That was the signal. The door burst open so suddenly that the IV pump beeped in protest. Naraya was first through the door, followed by Dr. Ortiz and Detective Whitlock. "Step back," Mrs. Arden Ortiz commanded, his tone sharp. Sable froze the vial still in her hand. For the first time, her composure cracked. "What is this? What's happening?" Whitlock held up his badge. "We have probable cause to search your belongings and seize all items related to this patient's treatment. Please step away from the bed." Naraya moved quickly, sealing the glass in a bag marked for evidence. Ortiz ran a test strip through the liquid. Within seconds, the solution turned a deep violet. Warfarin confirmed, he said quietly. Sable's face went pale. "You set me up!" she shrieked. "She's lying. She's always hated me." I stood my knees steady for the first time in days. "No, Sable. I just finally stopped believing you." Her voice rose to a scream. "He'll never believe you. Harlan loves me. He'll believe the truth," I said softly, "because it's the only thing left." Out in the hallway, footsteps thundered. Gideon Parr appeared at the far end, trying to turn back, but 2 officers caught him before he could reach the elevator. His laptop fell to the floor, its screen flickering with open documents, emails, transfer forms, my name forged again and again. Whitlock read her rights as she trembled, wrists locked in cold metal. I didn't move until she was gone. Then I turned to Harlan. His monitor suddenly spiked lines dancing wildly across the screen. Ortiz shouted for a crash cart, nurses flooded the room, and for a terrible moment I thought we'd been too late. I pressed my palm against the glass of the monitor, whispering his name over and over. "You're okay, baby. You're okay. Stay with me." Then mercifully, the beeping slowed. The line steadied. Ortiz exhaled. "He's stable. We've got him." I sank into the chair, every muscle trembling. The room smelled of antiseptic and fear, but it was over. The nightmare, the pretending, the constant dread, it was done. Outside, I heard the echo of Sable's voice as they led her away. "You'll regret this, Zephyrine," I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. I stared at my son, his chest rising and falling under the hum of the machines. For the first time in months, I felt air fill my lungs without burning. As the dawn began to break beyond the hospital windows, the sky turning the color of bruised lavender, I realized something simple and devastating. Justice hadn't come as revenge. It had come as survival. And as I sat there watching the monitors pulse in rhythm with the first morning light, I knew the war was over. But the reckoning had only just begun. 6 months after the arrest, I walked into the Cuyahoga County Courthouse in Raleigh, beneath a ceiling the color of old honey and a forest of cameras. 3 days, the bailiff said. 3 days to stitch truth from paper video and bruised memory. On day 1, The prosecutor stood and said the names out loud so no one could hide behind pretty masks anymore. Sable Arden, legal name Marla Kincaid, and Gideon Parr charged with first-degree attempted murder property fraud and forged legal documents. The words hung in the warm light like iron. Day 2, they called me first. My palm trembled over the Bible, but my voice knew where to go. I told the jury about the text that sliced through dinner, the rain, the vinyl hallway, the whisper against my ear. Hide. And trust me, and the sight of a manicured hand moving a clamp on my son's IV. I described the cafe meeting where a lawyer with velvet manners slid a temporary power of attorney across the table, the sentence buried in fine print authority over all financial and personal matters, and the line prepared for a forged witness, Nariah Brooks. I played the recording from my phone. I watched faces harden. When the defense rose, they didn't touch the facts. They tugged at my age. Wasn't I tired? Weren't emotions high? Couldn't mother-in-law friction color my perception? I held the rail and said, "Truth doesn't need to be young. It needs to be clear." The courtroom went quiet in that particular way that tells you a thing has landed where it should. Day 3, science spoke. Dr. Malcolm Ortiz explained the numbers that had haunted our nights, elevated INR internal bleeding risk, and showed the lab reports warfarin in the IV bag and in the sealed glass of orange juice. Nariah cued the footage from the badge pinned to my chest. The jurors leaned forward as Sable poured a clear liquid into a cup and stirred calm as Sunday. Detective Whitlock testified about the arrest inside the ICU, the seizure of Gideon's laptop, and the emails that matched my recording word for word, including the one that read, "Make sure she drinks it first." Then Sable stood tears at the corners, like someone had painted them there. She said she'd only followed Gideon's advice, that fear had made her reckless, that she never meant to. She didn't finish the sentence. Gideon stared at the defense table as if it were a mirror, and he didn't much like what he saw. The prosecutor pulled up the last set of files, complaints from Nevada and Texas, new names and old patterns, men who had survived without their homes, their savings, their pride. The air in the room changed. This was not a tragic misunderstanding. This was a method. A door opened at the back. Harlan entered in a gray suit that hung just a little loose at the shoulders. He raised his right hand, then took the stand and looked at the woman who had slept next to him for 7 years. "She poisoned both my body and my heart," he said, voice steady but raw. I felt something inside me knit and ache at the same time. Before the verdict, Sable turned and found me. The smile was gone. What she wore was colder. "You won," she whispered. "But you lost your son." For a split second, I felt the echo of the ICU monitor, the panic, the years of distance. Then Harlan reached for my hand in the gallery and squeezed. The jury filed in. Guilty on every count. The judge pronounced 35 years, no parole before 22. The gavel sounded like a door closing on a storm. Outside, flashbulbs popped and questions flew. I walked through them as if through rain. "Justice isn't a victory," I said to the air more than to any microphone. "It's what my son was owed." A year later, spring tipped its first green into Asheville, and the mountains breathed like someone had finally opened a window. I sold the Shaker Heights house and kept none of its ghosts. The check became seed money, and the seed became a room with secondhand chairs, a pot of coffee, and a sign on the door that read, "The Blue Ridge Foundation." Our work was simple and hard. Help the people nobody believed, older parents drained by caregivers, women trapped by financial threats. Anyone who came in with tremor in the voice and a stack of papers they didn't understand. Nariah said yes before I finished asking and took on the medical program training nurses to trust the itch in their instincts and to document like the future depended on it. Dr. Ortiz came on as our clinical advisor designing screening protocols hospitals could run quickly when something felt off. Detective Whitlock spent Thursday evenings in our tiny conference room, walking clients through protective orders, reporting pathways, and the anatomy of a clean chain of custody. Harlan returned to work in a scaled-down version of his company profits, pointed toward people and not ceilings, and every month he sent a donation with a note that said only, "For someone's second chance." On our first community night, I stood at a folding podium, hands steady on its scarred edge. "No one is born for a fight," I said, scanning the faces that looked a lot like mine, "but when darkness touches your family, you learn how to be light." Afterward, a woman lingered until the room emptied. She pressed my hands between hers and whispered that her sister had been feeling off for months, that a clinic we'd trained had caught the numbers before they turned fatal. She said a name from years and states away one of Marla Kincaid's other lives. The circle closed, not with vengeance, but with interruption. A letter arrived from the prison, written in a tidy, disciplined script. "I'm not sorry I lost," it said. "I'm sorry you made me see myself." I sat with it a long time, balancing the weight of pity against the gravity of harm. That night, I fed the letter to the kitchen sink. Flame watched it curl and blacken and let its smoke climb out the window into clean mountain air. When the day was done, Harlan and I drove the Blue Ridge Parkway until the road forgot its own turns, and the world fell open in layered blues. We sat on a stone overlook as the sun folded itself behind ridgelines. "I owe you a lifetime," he said barely above the wind. "No," I answered, resting my head against his shoulder. "You owe me a good life. That's more than enough." On the trail back night, rose slow and kind, I thought of the hospital door where I learned to be quiet. I thought of the courtroom where I learned to speak. I thought of a nurse who said, "Trust me," and taught me how to trust myself. That first night, I hid to see the truth. This morning, I waked to tell it, and I'm not afraid anymore.